Welcome, everybody, to Beyond Borders. This is going to be a great conversation. Global opportunities for short-term rentals and businesses, and we have a tremendous panel. I'm going to introduce them right to left. Chris Stephenson, why don't you raise your hand, Chris? Bo Yi from Trip.com, and Lisa Marçais from Airbnb.
Hi, everyone.
And Merilee Karr from Under the Doormat Group. We're going to take the next half hour or so and just really look at where the global growth is coming from and how businesses are responding and shifting to demand. What happens when things go wrong, and what's going to define the winners in this space over the next few years. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. When you think of global growth today, what matters most? Winning more supply, winning guest trust, or winning regulatory confidence? And as this sector professionalizes, what kind of host property or partner is best positioned to win? I'm going to start with you, Bo.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Let me start off by saying supply and compliance are absolutely fundamental, very essential, no doubt about it. But at Trip.com, we actually put a large focus on guest trust. Because trust takes a long time to build, and trust is harder to replicate. And that's why it's particularly important for a non-standardized product like short-term rentals. So Trip.com, we win guest trust by having a customer service team of 16,000 in-house customer service agents globally. And then this team process an order of 300 million customer inquiries every year. And we managed to make the benchmark that we achieve 99% of the customer inquiries are answered within 30 seconds and accurately resolved, deliver a resolution within 5 minutes on average. So that is the way that Trip wins guest confidence. So we basically make ourselves tremendously available to make sure that if anything goes wrong, our customers are always getting taken care of. And similarly, I think for property managers, you guys can win the trust of your guests in a similar fashion. So by communicating proactively and quickly with your guest before and during and after the stay. And more importantly, this needs to be done with real human support in addition to any AI chatbot, automated AI machines that you may have. And if you keep doing that over the time, you will gain the trust, you will accumulate a handful number of good reviews, and your review scores on the OTA sites will definitely go up. So next, let me very briefly share what it makes from Trip.com's perspective, from our platform perspective, what makes it a great partner on our platform. So generally, a top-performing partners would have 5 traits in common. So number one, responsiveness. I've talked enough about that one. The second one is reliability, meaning that you need a great operational record, minimum host cancellations, minimum overbookings, and then number 3 is going to be flexibility. So you want to remove booking frictions, you want to introduce flexible cancellation policy, and then minimize the length of stay restrictions. Yeah, that's a conversion killer. And then the fourth one is going to be accuracy of the listing. Of course, you want to set the right guest expectation. And finally, number 5 is dynamic pricing. So a top-performing, a great property partner at Trip.com, they capture shifting demand by offering diversified rate plans like early bird, last minute, and etc. So these 5 factors are the signals that powers up our sorting and recommendation algorithm. So if you consistently deliver the fundamentals, you're most likely to get the best visibility and booking volume. Thank you very much.
Well, you've made a compelling case for Trip.com. Chris, what do you think? Well, how does Marriott approach this time of growth, and where are you headed?
Yeah, sure. So I love how you phrased the question, because between those three things, I can't pick one. So maybe what I'll kind of talk through is how we tend to approach it. So we always start with regulatory compliance. So if we look at a market, and as a platform, if we can't operate there in full compliance, or we have concerns about property managers who can't operate in full compliance, then we'll choose not to enter that market. And there are a number of markets around the world that we choose not to operate in for those reasons. But once we're sure that we can operate in full compliance in the market, and I know Merilee was one of our early partners who kind of onboarded, so she knows how seriously we take compliance. We then move into the demand profile. So then we look at where do our Bonvoy members want to travel, where do they want to redeem their points. We're really lucky in that we've got 270 million Bonvoy members. We've got a lot of data to look at. So past booking history, where are they searching? We append all of that with third-party data from Airbnb, and then we build our kind of demand strategy and demand plan. Once we've got the demand plan, that's when our business development team take that and look at closing the gaps in the supply base. So a gap could be just a market that we aren't in and should be. So for example, French Polynesia, we had kind of identified a few months ago and moved into there fairly recently. Or it could be inventory type gaps. So maybe in a market we've got too much premium inventory and we need luxury, or we've got too much larger 4-bedroom properties and we need 2-bedroom apartments. So we'll set very specific goals to close those gaps and then kind of work to that plan.
Oh, interesting. And how does Airbnb approach that, Lisa?
Yeah, so when I think about growth, there are a few things to consider. First of all, the quality of the supply that needs to be authentic and unique. At Airbnb on our platform, we have millions of homes, right? They are all unique. But the specificity of Airbnb is to really connect our guests with our hosts. And this is what creates the uniqueness of our experience. But most importantly, when I think about supply and quality of supply, I straight away think about our hosts, right? They are here and they are all growing and scaling our platform. I think about them, at the very beginning of their life cycle, when they onboard, when they want to find out about how do they maximize their listing and how can we support them. But I also think about the hosts who are actually scaling their business, and we help them through providing the right API and having more sales fields supporting them along the way. And when I think about supply and quality of supply, I also think about the investment we are making in the future. So this year we announced very recently Best of British Funds, where we are investing 1 million to support those hosts in the industry that have very specific places to stay, and we really empower them to drive and grow in the business. So supply is the first one. Secondly, obviously, trust is really important. We have millions of guests, browsing our platform every day. So we need to make sure we are providing them the right experience. On average, on our platform, the rating is 4.7, so really, really high, which means that any guest that is browsing our platform knows that the stays where they are going to be in is affordable and is also very good quality for money. But this rating is actually hiding all of the product release we have to improve it every day. So on average, in the last 3 years, we released 500 features to improve that experience for our guests and make sure that the platform is very trusted on both parties. In terms of example, we've got guest favorite, which is one of the best ways to identify very quickly what are the best hosts on the platform and that are favorited by the guests. We also have single service fee that we just announced that will really simplify the fees on the platform across guests and hosts. And finally, air cover, which is a way to secure the trips for both guests and hosts on both sides. Yeah. And finally, regulatory, that is extremely important, especially at the moment. We need to make sure the rules are extremely proportionate between all parties. So at Airbnb, we connect with our hosts to understand what their experience is and what are their needs. We connect with the government to make sure they will represent those needs as well. And obviously, at the end of the day, we need to make sure it's very secure for our guests. So in summary, I think trust, supply, and regulatory are extremely important. But to be able to have this flywheel working, none of this will be possible without investing in marketing and driving the traffic to those hosts. And that's really important for us. At Airbnb, we've got one of the highest brand awareness in the world and in the country, in the UK. So we are really defending our position by investing in the right target audience, in families, in Gen Z, to make sure we are bringing in that traffic to our hosts, but we also are making some huge marketing investment with some key partnership, such as FIFA, the Olympics, to really increase that halo effect and make sure we are the key partner for all of those events.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into when exciting events are happening in the world in a minute. But before that, Merilee, what's your view on the state of growth?
Look, I've got a slightly different perspective, probably similar to many of you in the audience, because our Vive brand, we are a property management company. So we work with all of the OTAs sitting alongside here. But I actually think that if you're a property management company, the number one thing for you to think about for growth is supply. What you are bringing to the market is that supply. What you have to sell is that supply and the available nights that you have in the homes that you manage. And so for us, I think that's critical. Just this morning, we were able to announce that we're increasing the supply that we manage because we're acquiring a portfolio of properties from One Fine Stay in Paris and in London. But we are also working with our Hosperia brand in the Middle East, increasing supply in markets like Oman, Saudi, etc., but bringing them with the right professional management and standards. And I think that's really important because I think everyone here has mentioned the right regulatory standards. And I think property management companies, technology companies, everyone around this room, we've got a role to play in making sure that the reputation that we have for guests and the reputation of the product that we bring to market is meeting those standards. So I think those two things are intrinsically interconnected.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And it's great that you bring the perspective of someone who is offering this supply and working with the OTAs. Lisa teased it. Major one-off events from the Olympics to the World Cup to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour can create a surge of first-time hosts. How much of that spike turns into lasting, high-quality supply, and how much is just short-term opportunism? Lisa, I'm going to let you take that one.
Yeah, should I start? So two main things to remember about those events. First of all, Airbnb enables the cities to be able to host, right? Usually those events, sporting events, concerts, they are happening in areas where you don't always have hotels around. So it's a huge opportunity for us to support those cities. And secondly, when those type of events are being announced, most of the hosts are also new hosts, and that's really the trigger that actually helped them starting hosting. So if we take a step back on what's happening when one of those events is being released, the first thing is we see a surge in demand, right? It's pretty crazy. You see the traffic booming around those dates. But we not only see a surge in demand, we see it more often because we see more and more people are traveling for passion. They're traveling to go to a concert, to go to a rugby game. And that's really interesting because they are not only going there for the game or the concert they were planning to, they're also building a whole trip around, and we are there to support them along the way. So that's very important. Obviously, you mentioned Taylor Swift, which was one of the biggest events in the UK with Liverpool, Cardiff, all of those cities were obviously hosting her events. The Olympics as well were a huge event for us where we've got our hosts who accommodated about 500,000 guests during that period, which is massive. And during that period, we saw a spike in new hosts as well. And it was very interesting because most of them were hosting for the first time and they were really keen to earn a bit of money. So if I take a step back, what's the secret sauce when those events are announced? The first one is what is very important for hosts is, first of all, it's very easy for them to list. Secondly, it's very lucrative. When you're a host, obviously that's a huge demand, and they know Airbnb has their back on that. And secondly, some hosts are very new, so that's the first time they are going to earn a bit of money and rent their space, and they are really enablers for those cities to host. But also, what we very often see as well among half of the hosts that hosted for the first time, they became long-lasting hosts, and they become also micro-entrepreneurs.
That's so interesting. Chris, did you want to add something on this point of the major events?
Yeah, I mean, of course, these events are great for our industry. They're great for hospitality. What we see is when these events happen, in the sort of months and weeks leading up to it, you'll see a huge increase in supply. But what we find is that our creation rate, so the percentage of homes that we think meet our criteria, falls during that period. So a lot of the inventory that's been kind of pushed during that time may or may not be the right kind of inventory that we want. So we know we need to be really careful leading up to these events, that we don't just accept supply for supply's sake. We've got to make sure that we're delivering the right product and experience, particularly when the rate is likely to be higher than it is at any other point. And when the rate's higher, the guest expectation's higher, and we're really focused on guest satisfaction, so we've got to be very careful of that around these big events. So amazing for the industry, but we always kind of watch very closely around what kind of supply we bring on.
Yeah, well, that makes sense that the expectations get raised, especially when Taylor Swift is involved. Shifting gears a little bit, in a more volatile travel environment as we're seeing now, how can hosts and property managers diversify demand and adapt to shifting source markets? And what roles can platforms and distribution partners play when geopolitical tensions or other disruptions affect travel patterns? Bo, you wanted to speak on that?
Yeah,
first?
sure. So in today's very volatile environment, a lot of things happening, you want to diversify your demand sources without adding additional operational complexity. So this is where OTAs like Trip.com can step in. So first of all, we are not a China story. We're not just a China story. We actually have significant presence in Asian markets. Like our app is among the most downloaded apps, travel apps in a number of Asian markets. Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Malaysia, and Thailand, and etc. So by listing with us, you get access to a big and resilient pool of Asian travelers when other markets soften, right? So, and then secondly, we take the headache out of your localization. We have a feature in our backend called Campaign Calendar, where that feature covers 53 different markets about their local holidays. So, so property managers can align their promotion campaigns with local holidays, whether it's Korean Thanksgiving Day or it's Singapore National Day. Many of the property managers may not even have those dates on their radar. So, and lastly, we can help you turn social buzz into actual bookings. So our research shows that 1/3 of Chinese outbound travelers, they actually go to Red Note first for inspiration before booking on an OTA. And then over the years, we have built a network of influencers on Red Note, so we can help you advertise your properties and then turn social buzz right into visibility and then conversions for your properties. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
That's good. Merilee, why don't you give us the perspective as a property manager?
Yeah, so, I mean, look, we actually believe that, everybody wants direct bookings, and that's fantastic. You'll have repeat guests who come back. Of course, they're more profitable, and that's fantastic. But let's be honest, the budgets that these guys spend to acquire guests and bring them into your properties, no matter how big I get as a company, their budgets are always going to dwarf us. So for me, OTAs are part of the mix. I think what's really important is understanding, when demand trends shift. I mean, look, we've got a war going on right now. So probably fewer Americans are traveling over because they're a little bit worried about the geopolitical situation. But on the flip side, people from the Middle East are actually coming to Europe, and Europeans are staying within Europe. When all of those things happen, you need to make sure that your inventory and your product is in all the right places as those changes occur. And I think that's where, all of the OTAs play a really important role for our business, and I'm sure many other people in the room. But I think what's also really important is making sure that you've got the right technology. That's why we make sure Hosperia is connected deeply into all of the key OTAs and also other unique sources of demand. And I think Also things like, well, okay, if there's all of a sudden a drop in leisure demand, making sure that you're doing things to get business travelers in. It's making sure that your whole strategy is diversified. And so I think for all of the things that we do, that's why we want to be connected into the GDS and trusted stays. We want access to all of these OTAs, and we want to make sure that we've got our own direct bookings. And a mixed strategy is what makes you most resilient, whatever's going on in the external world that you can't control.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point about the mixed strategy. I don't know, Lisa, did you want to add something on this point?
Yeah, briefly, I think we're definitely at a tipping point in tourism, and I think it's becoming harder and harder to decorrelate tourism from geopolitics. What happened obviously a few months ago in the Middle East, like for us, the first reaction was obviously to make sure that our guests, hosts, and team members were safe across the region. So that was the first priority. The biggest learning from me, and that's exactly what you were describing, is like to understand like the resilience of hospitality and tourism. While before the conflict, obviously we had like very strong hub in the Middle East with Dubai, like welcoming a lot of guests traveling. Obviously with the conflict, unfortunately, all of this kind of slowed down. So our role is to really help our guests keep traveling around the world. And what we've seen is a lot of resilience from those guests. So even if some of them were traveling to Dubai, now they're actually consuming a bit more domestically, either in the UK or regionally in Europe. So what we need to do is like supporting that demand, but also supporting our hosts for the future, particularly in the Middle East, where obviously the conflict, there is a ceasefire, but things are still pretty tense. So we need to make sure we focus with them on the future and we partner with them so they can bounce back.
Yeah. Well, resilience is something that I think everyone in this room is building a lot of. And that's a nice segue into our next question, which is when a booking goes wrong, whether around a cancellation or another service issue, who should bear the risk? The guest, the host, the property manager, or the platform? And how can a strong service recovery turn a problem into a better guest experience? Chris was going to take that.
Yeah, sure. When things go wrong. I think when things go wrong, it's a true test of hospitality for everybody involved, whether it's the channel, the property manager, or even the technology provider. Sometimes there's issues, as you all know, with availability not syncing or whatever. But I think we all need to kind of come together to solve things for the customer, and it's a real true test of everybody's hospitality focus and expertise when that happens. The point around who should bear the cost or the risk, hard to answer because it really depends on the situation. So what we do is we kind of build up frameworks based on each of the scenarios that could happen. So we're very clear on our kind of policy, and we want to be consistent with all our guests. But also, we want the ability for our operations teams to use their empathy and take kind of unique decisions based on unique guest circumstances. We always, as a first point, will reach out to the property manager because 9 times out of 10, the property manager is in the best position to resolve an issue. And we'll agree with them the best course of action. So we tend to not make unilateral decisions. We'll talk to the property manager first, and then kind of get to a mutual agreement around how we're going to resolve the problem. I think as long as you're fair and you act with empathy, what we generally see is the guest is not focused on the problem, and what stays in their memory is sort of how you solved it and how you communicated and how you went about it. And we often see that our customer satisfaction scores for a stay that maybe wasn't perfect but was resolved in a really well way are higher than for a stay that went perfectly. So I think guest resolution is a real good way to drive guest loyalty and retention if it's done right.
Yeah, it's always about the recovery, isn't it? I mean, mistakes happen and most people are understanding. Bo, you had something to add on that?
Yeah, it's a quick and simple one for, I guess, for us. So we have protocol and policies for this. So basically, the guest should never be left at risk for such an unfortunate event. So we are committed to always work quickly to support the affected individual and then minimize their inconvenience, right? So what we do is our customer service will step in and then try to relocate a customer and then figure out everything else later on. And we, by the relocation, I mean relocate a customer to a equivalent or better property, and we absorb the additional costs up to 3 times of the nightly value of the original booking. So yeah, that is a protocol that we've been implementing for years.
Well, that's good about the relocation. We're going to take a moment to look forward and look into the crystal balls. Looking ahead, what will define the winners in the global short-term rentals over the next few years? Do you think it's going to be brand, technology, innovation, local market relationships, or the ability to anticipate the needs of the next generation of guests? Bo, you want to continue on?
Yeah, sure. From my perspective, I think the technology will likely be the key to success, in particularly AI. So we all know that large language models are very powerful, and but for us, our goal, Trip.com's goal, is not to build a competing AI model. So our goal is to really focus on where it matters most to the traveler. So first, we focus on actionable transactions. So we have a lot of data. We understand deeply that how a user interacts and then how user interacts with different properties, how their purchasing behavior are, and then we understand the conversion metrics. And then we configure our AI to kind of streamline the decision making and expedite the booking, and with fewer hassles. So and secondly, we use our AI to deliver certainty and reliability through ecosystem integrations. So we are an OTA with a lot of line of business. We have active direct partnerships with airlines, hotels, property managers, through which we are provided with precise inventory and pricing information, as well as operational status, right? So by leveraging this data, well, let me actually give you an example. So our system, I would not recommend a nice house on a beautiful island if we know that the ferry ticket to that island is almost sold out.
Oh, right.
Right. And then to give you another example, if we know from the customer's flight booking that they are arriving late at night, we will probably prioritize the property closer to the airport in our recommendation algorithm. So basically, by combining transaction-focused AI and ecosystem supply of real-time factual data, we can deliver a reliable travel solution that travelers, our guests, really deserve. Thank you.
Wow, amazing. I mean, is it all about AI, Chris? What do you think?
Yeah. I think a lot of it, I think we've all talked about AI a lot at these conferences probably over the last kind of couple of years. And, if I sort of bring it back down to the basics in terms of what we see from the property managers that we work with that tend to be really successful and they're growing and they're delivering really great customer satisfaction, I think the first thing is that they are businesses that see themselves as hospitality businesses. They don't see themselves as tech companies. They're hospitality first, and they're supported by a great tech stack, great operations, but they are a hospitality company. And I think that mentality and that ethos is something that really sets out the sort of the winners and losers in this space. I think companies that think about their long-term brand and reputation, they're not just thinking about short-term yields. They're thinking about where is this brand and is this business going next year and the year after. And then the third thing, I think it's really important to make sure that your tech and your operations match the number of properties that you're managing. And I think we see kind of quite often that maybe you start off managing 20 or 30 homes, you have operations and technology that support that, then you get to 100 or 120, and maybe your infrastructure can't support that level of inventory. And it's important to kind of stop at a certain point and think, if I'm going to make this next step and I'm going to sort of incrementally increase the size of my business, I need to step back and invest in the tech and infrastructure to do that. And businesses that take the time to pause and sort of reinvent their operations and their technology for sustained growth, again, tend to be the ones that set themselves apart.
Great, yeah, so interesting. Lisa?
Yeah, when we think about future growth, we think about things a little differently at Airbnb. Obviously, our key priority is focusing on the uniqueness of our stays, having unique homes where anyone can travel into, but also providing the authenticity on our platform, either through connecting with our hosts, but also enjoying experiences alongside your stay. And we launched recently experiences pillar on our platform, which is obviously extremely successful, particularly in the UK. So that's really, really important for us, and focusing on that authenticity and uniqueness is important, especially in the world of AI, where, yes, we're investing in AI on our platform to help consumers, guests, and hosts as well managing their business. But traveling is all about connection, right? And the worst thing we want is actually having AI during our trip. So that's one thing. Also, when we think about the future, we think about the economic impact we have in the UK and on the hospitality sector particularly. Airbnb itself contributes to support 75,000 employments across the UK, which is also the equivalent of 6 billion into the British economy. So we are a strong supporter of that. And we feel like if authenticity, uniqueness, and also having a strong economy and strong levers is definitely the right platform for us to continue growing. So there will definitely be some headwinds, I'm not going to lie, but I feel we are confident about the fact that we are focusing on the right thing. We are focusing on the rural economy, which is obviously trying to disperse tourism as much as possible and making it accessible to anyone. And also most of the time, rural means more affordable, which is a key topic at the moment. We're also surfing on new trends like set jetting, where people actually traveling for on places where a movie has been, recorded and so on. So people go there and visit those places. For example, on the Wuthering Heights movie, that's one of the latest we supported. So that's extremely important for us. I mentioned before as well, best of British, reinvesting and investing in the future of hosts by selecting them and curating them. But the most important thing that we need to focus on as an OTA is actually focusing on the right generation. We need to make sure our platform is relevant for the future generation, like students, Gen Z, who are actually the future of our platform. So what we are doing at Airbnb, we are investing on the student audience by offering them a discount code, but also offering them all of the perks they want, right? Tickets to events. We're also working on student-only accommodation, so it's cheaper for them and really affordable. And that's what you want when you're young. You want to travel and experience it in the right way. And what we do as well with this, we also focus on investing marketing on this audience by obviously focusing on the right platforms, social media, and so on. So hopefully, all of our hosts in this audience will benefit from it, and will get a new audience that will come to their places.
Yeah, well, it sounds like Airbnb is well positioned to hit so many consumer trends that I often write about. So the set jetting, experiences, affordability, and also that you're appealing to the next generation with all the discounts. I think that's brilliant. Merilee, why don't you wrap us up with your thoughts as the operator?
Well, look, for me, I think one of the things in a world of AI, all these trends, ultimately, I think brand is really critical because it all comes back to trust. And whether that is, as an operator, leveraging some of the fantastic brands of the OTAs and providing a service that matches what their consumers are looking for, or whether that is having your own brand and the combination of those two. We believe that Vive is really important to who we are. It's a brand that stands for something, and that consumers who come and stay with us, potentially from an OTA in their first instance, then understand what we offer, what's different, where do we fit in the market. And I think that's really important in the future. I think that also then flows really well into the second trend, which is AI. If you would have spoken to me a year ago, and I remember sitting on a panel actually in Dubai, talking about how in luxury, it was not really about AI, it was about that consumer interaction and being able to provide a personable experience. I absolutely still believe that. But what's happened in the world even over the last 3-4 months, from an AI perspective, has fundamentally changed the way our business and certainly our Hosperia technology interacts with AI and what that means for efficiency. As an operator, there are so many things that used to be hard or complicated that we can now simplify using AI, and having the right technology, as Chris said, to be able to adopt AI in the right ways so that you get the right mix between your brand and the personal touches that you can provide, but making everything else efficient so that quick answers get delivered, consumers get what they need, and where they don't need to speak to a person, that just happens. Because this is an industry where you're constantly looking at tight margins and all these things, and where you can make your operation efficient, have the right brand, and provide a personal layer to differentiate you from others. I think that is the recipe for success as we look ahead to the next couple of years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What a tremendous panel. I've personally learned a lot. I thank you all so much for being here. That's it. Thank you so much. Or is there time for Q&A? Do you want? Oh, we have 5 minutes for a bit of Q&A. If there's questions in the audience. Oh, we got one in the back. If there's, you want to stand up?
Hi, thanks. I love that term, Lisa, set dressing. It's great. Question for you, if I may. What does Airbnb see as the biggest gap between what guests are expecting and what hosts are actually delivering at the moment? Because it could be good opportunity for growth within that metric.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so it's hard to hear up here.
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to speak a bit louder? Is that better?
Yeah, that would be better.
Sorry, Lisa. So a quick question regarding what do you see as the biggest gap between what guests are currently expecting and what hosts are delivering? Because there could be a good growth opportunity within that.
Yeah, exactly. So we obviously the main thing for us is to analyze as much as possible our customer data and feedback. And obviously, whenever there is an experience, we always get the rating instantly. So we always know what are the gap between what they saw and what they experienced. And obviously, with our role as a platform, we help hosts being as accurate as possible. Of course, the listing needs to look beautiful, but we also want the listing to look accurate as much as possible. So we really encourage our hosts to be as precise as possible in terms of what they have in the listing, etc. So one of the ways we use to bridge that gap is obviously looking at our customer data, listening to both sides, what they have to bring, and obviously trying to mitigate both sides. I would say we'll also start leveraging AI as well, because there is a lot of things where visually on an image you can definitely see what's there. So that's also a tool we'll be leveraging in the future.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to ask a question? We have literally 2 minutes. All right. Oh, wait, one in the...
Right in the front.
Snuck right in there.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Andreas. I'm a property manager in Greece.
Okay.
So my main question is, what is the differences between, because every 5 years, mainly we face some crisis, either COVID or geopoliticals, wherever, we face a lot of cancellations. So about the cancellation policies regarding the AI and the technologies between the, on the OTAs, what would you recommend how we will, let's say, serve into this momentum of crisis when something changes with geopoliticals or any other situation? What would be your, let's say, 1 or 2 advices that we should take care on the cancellation policies that we will need? Thank you.
This is a question for me again?
No, I think it's for anyone.
Yeah, you can open
I
it
don't know
up,
if Chris or Bo, if you want to take on the cancellation or crises, how you can prepare.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, it's more straightforward because we have 4 cancellation policies that hosts can, or property managers can choose from. And we let you decide which is the best cancellation policy for each home type. We don't override that, so we kind of believe that property managers know your market better, you know your customers better, so we let you decide on which policy you choose, and we don't kind of influence or override that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. How about a round of applause for the panel? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.